Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto. I'm a musician from Northport, New York, and today I have the absolute pleasure of having Ian Sue here on the channel. If you've been on the or been around my channel for a bit, you might have heard his name come around here or there, or seen his name featured in a couple things. He's actually played guitar in a couple tracks that I've released. For example, I believe "Nightlife" was one of the tracks, or yeah, I think it was "Nightlife." There was a couple of them here and there that you've laid some solos down, and it's great stuff, man. So I appreciate you taking the time to play on my tracks, but also we're here to talk about you today because I want to hear your story as a musician and what you have coming. So something pretty exciting coming. So Ian, thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Oh, absolutely, man. So for people that aren't super familiar with you and your story, I'd love to hear a bit of it, and tell me who you are, what you do, and what the story is, man.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there isn't a lot of material of me talking about who I am online. I post a lot of stuff about myself, but not a lot of interviews. So this is one of the first. I'm very honored that it's with you.
Wow, that's a pleasure. Thank you.
I am a record producer. I am songwriter, artist, guitar player, and I've loved playing guitar since I was 12 years old. I live in New York City, and I'm in Queens currently, and I run around New York playing shows with my band, and I kind of pivoted from recording to live music, and I think that's where my passion really lies right now. But it's a whole story. I mean, I grew up playing guitar, and I recorded through the pandemic, and I recorded with people, and I recorded guitar and a bunch of things, and I made my own music, and I still do. I still record other people's music. I still love to make my own music, but I play a lot of music live now. That's what I'm doing mainly. But yeah, I grew up um not in a not to like a family of like musicians, but to a family that played a lot of music and loved music. I listened to a lot of music growing up. I grew up in the age of CDs, and I didn't know what
Yeah,
Spotify was until I was like, I'd say I was like 10 when I realized what Spotify was, and it became more popular. Now it's like a whole thing. It's like streaming is the main way that people consume music. But I grew up with CDs, and one of the things that I really like to do whenever I make music is I like to make CDs, and because I just love
that's
having
cool.
that physical, um, like I have a CD right here. It's Heavier Things by John Mayer, one of the records that I've been inspired by, and I love listening to albums growing up, and then throughout the pandemic, I started making my own music, and eventually just started making my own records.
Nah, that's great, man. So I want to hear a little bit more about. We're going to get talking to the fact that we're having this conversation because you're about to release a new record. But I want to hear kind of like your thoughts on that. So you mentioned the fact that like you're transitioning. You transitioned recently from recording a lot of your own stuff and other people's stuff to wanting to play live more. Talk about that a little more. I want to hear about like just the aspect of why you feel that way and how you find as a musician. This is the main question. How you find as a musician that to be sustainable. Like how do you promote yourself for live shows, because one of the arguments to some degree, and I'm curious your opinion, that I found, people are like, oh, you don't play shows as much as you used to. Like I used to play out a lot, and my response would be, well, like there's a lot more fish in the sea on YouTube than there are at this random bar that I'm playing at. And I have nothing against it. I loved playing. I loved especially playing my own original music at these shows and stuff, but there was like 20 people there, as opposed to like how many people you can reach online. So I'm curious your opinion. I'm not against it. I just want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and also as somebody like you who has 150,000 subscribers, YouTube is definitely a much more sustainable thing. I think for me, I transitioned to live music last year, and it was just a series of things that a series of opportunities that I was really blessed to have, that came together. I made my first album in 2022, so that was 2 years ago now, and I made it all by myself in my room. I didn't have the money to, get producers or mixers or mastering engineers or anything like that. So I learned how to do it myself. And I
I
think
love that, man.
that's like the motto of my life. Like I never really had anybody who could do stuff for me. So I was like, okay, so how I figured out how to use softwares and stuff. And I since moved to better things. Like I started my very, very, very first recordings were like on Adobe Audition. Then I moved to like Cakewalk by BandLab, and now I'm in Logic, and I love it. Um, but yeah, I made that whole record by myself, and I was just like, okay, I've been making so much music. I really want, like, my dream as a 16-year-old and seeing my favorite bands, like I was talking about records and CDs, right? And also being on YouTube and just seeing live shows. And I know you react to a lot of live shows on your YouTube channel as well. Um, just seeing all these bands play these giant festivals and stuff, that was my dream, to have a band. So I in when I was in senior year of high school, which was in 2023, like January, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna look for just anything that I can get. I was like, okay, I don't know where I'm gonna find it, but it was good. I had nobody, I had no connections. My parents had no connections in the industry, right? So I was like, okay, I have to really build this from the ground up. So I went to guitar centers in New York, and then that was the very first, like my first entrance into figuring out what the music scene was really like in New York, was going to guitar centers. I talked to people, and I got literally no good conversations for a few months, and then one day I walk in the guitar center, and I'm talking to this guy who's like selling guitars, and he's like this old guy, and he's like selling guitars, and he seems interesting. And there's just also this other younger guy who's like sitting on the side playing another guitar. And I'm like, okay, I probably have more luck talking to the guy selling guitars, right? So I'm talking to the guy. Guy doesn't turn out to be that cool. He leaves. So I go and talk to the younger guy, and he turns out that he's my age and he's in a band. And this is really cool because I've never heard of anybody who's like 19, 20, or like 18, in a band and going around New York City playing shows. I'm like, how are you getting shows? And I was just bombarding him with questions like, how did you get a
Yeah.
band? How did you get your shows? How do you do that? How do you do this? Right. And he was just like, pointed me to a couple different places, couple different organizations that throw shows. But in terms of getting a band, there's no formula to it. There's like I think what my band really started, a few months later, I started my band, and I realized that it was just, I started it with just friends who believed in me. I'm sure you relate to that in some form as well. But like my friends started that band with me to play those songs on that first album that I made, and we ended up playing a show at a rock club called the Bitter End in New York City. It was a charity concert by an organization called Kids Rock for Kids. Basically, their mission is, they give money to kids experiencing homelessness, kids experiencing war, by throwing these concerts with younger bands. And we were lucky enough to be on the bill for one of their shows, and we just started. That kind of set us off into a lot of things. We played a lot of shows that summer, um, and I just looked for every single possible thing that I could get. But I think the difference was this time I had people with me for the first time, and I think that really inspired me to keep looking for things. I think, and it's not always. It wasn't just, we weren't making money at all in the beginning of our first, like like we're still probably not making enough money to live at all, but we played so many things that inspired us to keep going. And then
Sure.
we played so many shows that led us to believe in ourselves and realize that, hey, this could be a possible thing. Like we went from playing that rock club that was like 250 people, we moved up, we played Mercury Lounge in February, and it was it was fantastic. And that was the first show that I stood up by myself, and then we had a bill with like 3 bands. It was like the smallest bill because like when you start out, you're like used
Yeah.
to like
I
10,
was just about to say
15
that's a
bands.
great bill, man. Because
Yeah.
like you were about to say, like when you're first starting out, there's usually like 9 bands in the bill,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like
And you get put up in like in the eighth band, and people are like
yeah,
immediately
nobody
trying to
wants
stop
to
you.
hear the other. Yeah, oh gosh, man. Exactly.
It's
That's a
it's
that's
just how
funny.
it is. It's just how it is.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
think I really got used to these 9 band bills, and I just grew to love it. Like just seeing all different bands, and like they're not always good. But then as we kept playing more shows, I kept getting into like these 9, 10 band bills, but the bands got better. So I was like,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
I'm starting to enjoy this. But the 3 band shows, I was like, wait a second, this is kind of cool. Like people
Yeah,
are just here for me, you know.
yeah,
But that took a long time to build up to.
yeah.
And I ended up just playing guitar for, not just my band, but I ended up playing guitar for a couple other projects. So that like not just putting all of my stuff into my band, like I think as a live musician, if you want to survive as a live musician, you really got to put yourself out there with other projects and not just your own. And I love my original music, and that's like my main thing. But
Yeah.
I really had to put my guitar playing elsewhere in the session stuff and also live stuff, right? So I ended up joining another band called Kaleidoscope, which I play extensively with, and they're like my second project now. Like we moved together, and I play a lot of like sub shows every now and then. But Kaleidoscope is my consistent second project. That band, we played our first arena in April this year, and it was that I walked on that stage. I was like, okay, I can do this, you know. I feel like all that work and dreaming of like building up in like a like the past year felt worth it to me. Like running around venues, like
Hmm.
I had no tech, I had no like people to help me set things up. I was on stage plugging all my stuff in. I
Yeah.
was carrying amps and guitars around on subways, and
I was just about to ask that if you had a car or not, if you're taking this stuff on
no,
subways.
I'm in New York City. There's no way I'm
It's
driving around.
exactly, I know exactly. That's why I
Yeah.
was laughing in my
I
head. That's
I
so funny.
my hands and shoulders are gone now. Carrying stuff, and it's like in subways at late nights, like it's just like it's not it, right? But I felt like I think in summer of 2023, first of all, I had really good friends surrounding me, so I felt like I wasn't alone in that struggle.
Hmm.
So it didn't feel like I was like, the starving artist going from bar to bar. But we did end up playing a lot of really cool shows. We played some street festivals and stuff, but
Mm.
it all involved dragging gear around, But I grew
Yeah.
to love that aspect of it as well because I felt like I was doing something that wasn't going to something that was nothing. And in regards to your question of like just like my thoughts and like the sustainability of it all, I think I still don't know how it could be a sustainable thing for me. I'm still starting out. You've got so many more years in the industry ahead of me, but as someone who's played just like about every show he could find this year, I think that I find a lot of opportunity and inspiration and motivation in branching out. I don't just like say yes to every single person that says, "Hey, can you play guitar for my band?" Right? But I have branched out quite a bit. I play guitar here and there in different venues, and like just like seeing all the variation of things and seeing how each venue in New York works.
Mm.
Like whether it be like the tiniest DIY show or like a nicer club, or even moving up a little bit to like venues like Mercury Lounge, which get my band on Ticketmaster, like that feels a little bit more real. It's like that spectrum of things. Just seeing that at least makes me feel that something there is possible.
Yeah.
And it's not a sustainable thing for sure at the beginning, but if you're willing to just really work at it, I think that there's always opportunity there.
Absolutely, man. Good things come to those who work for them, right? So I want to hear two things. One, I want to hear a little bit more about that arena show. Tell me about that.
So Kaleidoscope, the drummer of Kaleidoscope is one of my best friends. His name is Abik Nath. He goes to Stony Brook University. And Stony Brook University hosts a yearly music festival in their arena called the Brookfest, which is I'm wearing their shirt right now.
Mm.
We applied for the festival, we got in, and we were one of the opening acts with a couple other bands who are great New York City bands in their own right. There's a band called Chronic Delta that plays New York shows, and there's a band called Razabel, which I have gotten the pleasure of meeting, and we're also friends with them. Just opening acts, and then a
Yeah, cool.
giant headliner like Bruno Mars has played this.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
it's who else has played? I think Childish Gambino may have played it in one of their past years. But basically, this year they were started experimenting with student performances. So because Kaleidoscope drummer was in Stony, we applied and we got in and we played that show and we were one of the opening acts and it was like super fun. It was the first time that I was on stage and there were 20 people in monitoring and front of house and there were people like really taking care of us. And then
Yeah.
like I had my own backline amp and then I could bring my own stuff and everything seemed set up for me and I was like and people were like, what do you need? Do you need any monitors? We got you. You could bring your rig and we can set it up. And I was like, dude, because like I mean, this is like getting into like nerd level world, but like I bring my in-ear rig around and like no venue ever wants to mess around with it. You
Uh huh.
think that front of house really wants to move into the in-ear world because no one likes wedges? But
Uh
no
huh.
one also wants to set up in-ears and wedges at the same time because like I'm the only one running in-ears and all the other bands are running wedges. So I never got to use my in-ears too much unless it's like a show that I set up. But this show, there were so many people there. They were just like, here, let's get your in-ear set up, and it was like a fantastic experience. But I think just getting up to that stage and feeling the power of the drums in an arena
Mm.
where it's like boom, like it felt very different from playing like a club in New York City. Like I
Yeah.
played a lot of nice clubs in New York City that are really cool, but just that reverb in that arena was like whoa, And it was like it was so fun. And I don't know. I mean, the headliner for this year was A Boogie with a Hoodie. It was really funny, like getting to see just how a festival like that worked.
Mm.
And then I ended up doing a couple of other music festivals that year, not playing just as an audio tech, but it was all a cool learning experience, just to see how higher things work. because I don't get that sort of experience every single day. Like, how do arena shows work, you know? But then that show gave me the confidence to say, okay, you know, that's how a show like that works. I think I'm ready to when I do get there, I know how it works.
Yeah.
So an opportunity like that, I'm eternally grateful for.
For sure, man. Absolutely. It's all these things you grind your teeth and learn how the industry works, and it's just learning how relations work. And it's absolutely, man. You know, I played a lot of different things, and one of the things that I most enjoy playing with are, for example, like I play in my church band, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that with that is like you can immediately tell the professional musician who's played all these different shows versus the non-professional musician, even if like not even talking quality of musician, because some of the non-professionals are even better than the professionals, but just in how they handle certain things that come up on stage. You know, if like your in-ear monitor stops working, the non-professional like, oh man, man, the professional's like, dude, I played shows where like all I hear is feedback. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and it's like, and you just get over it because there's nothing you can do. So like, it's funny what you learn, what you see bothers, you know, the professional versus not. It's like you're really just thickening your music skin. That when the right opportunity presents, it's like, whatever. You roll with the punches, you know.
That was I related to that so much. Like I stopped complaining about my church wedge mix when I
Exactly,
started
because
playing shows. I was like, okay, this is fine. Like, hey, this sounds good today. I don't care. Like I can hear
exactly.
myself. Yeah.
Exactly, man. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your music, man. So you have this new record coming out November 16th, I believe, 15th.
November 15th, yeah, but there's a show on the 16th, so it's kind of confusing. There's like 2 dates around, but yeah.
So talk to me about it.
So I started recording the second album like maybe December of last year, but it was like a really passive thing because again I was playing all these shows and I was doing all these things. So I started recording really, really slowly, and the album really ramped up in like summer of
Okay.
this year. And basically I was like, I don't know what to write about in beginning of like or the end of last year. But then I started playing all these shows and then experiencing really what it was like to really like put my work into it as a musician in and for the first time I was an adult. I turned 18 like in 2022, 2023. I realized that there's so many things about growing up that you don't realize, and also just so many things about being a musician and being a consistent musician that I just never thought about. So one of the things that I started to experience was this feeling of I don't deserve all the good things that are coming to me. That's just because I'm not good enough. And then the next day, I would feel like, oh, I do deserve this because I'm like the king of the world and I'm like the greatest musician ever. And I do deserve all this stuff. Like I felt like I was being handed all these things. Some days I felt like I was being handed all these things because people thought I was really good, but they didn't realize how bad I actually was and how much I faked to get up there because they say fake it until you make it, and I faked it until I made it for in a couple ways. But I'm not saying that my work was not justified, but it felt like that sometimes. So like that's why I started writing this record called Imposter Syndrome, because there's like days when you really feel that you don't deserve it, and there's other days when you feel that you're the top of everything and you're better than everyone. And that feeling of like going back and forth gets really confusing really fast
Yeah.
because you don't understand where in the lane you are.
Mm.
And especially, I think, okay, so when I started as a producer and making my own music and I wasn't doing live shows, this bothered me to an extent, but not really. Like it was just like, oh, do people really like my music, or are they just saying it just because they're nice to me? And then I started playing the shows, and then I realized that there was a pressure of like, will people come to more shows if they find out that like I'm really not as good as what I was? And the pressure of playing every show after that, no matter what it was, became I gotta play this to the best of my ability, otherwise they'll just give up on me. And that I really found that to not be necessarily true. Like, I mean, as I played more shows, I'll start to allow myself to really just have the bad show every now and then. Like it's not a big deal. When I was starting, I was really scared of that. I was really scared of having a bad show, and I don't have that many bad shows, but I look back at shows sometimes, and I'm just like, well, what did people think of me? Like everybody said good job to me, but like, did they really, like, were they in the back cringing about my music? I don't know. So it's like that feeling of up and down. So I started writing about it, and I made a record about it. And I think like one of my favorite lyrics in the album goes, I built a castle on a hill of sand. I sat on a throne and held the kingdom in my hand. And then and I made them think I could do it all, but soon they'll see everything that I'm doing wrong. And that was, it's just that kind of feeling of like, I know that what I'm doing, it's just that false feeling of self-doubt, right?
Mm,
It's like, I, I know it's not true, but at the same time, I just feel like people hate me and people hate the music and they're just being fake, right?
mm,
I don't know. It was just like, it was just a mix of that. I think I've always felt that kind of fear, but I really started writing about it because of the live shows and the pressure of being watched all the time. And I also climbed up the music scene a little bit. More people started to know who I was. More people started to know my name. And when you have that name, I really want to like keep that reputation up, right?
mm,
So that self doubt, um, I think the end of the record, when I was finishing it, I think I finally came to peace with the fact that I'll never get rid of this self doubt, but I have to learn how to live with it because that's the only way. Like you're as an artist, you're always going to be super critical of yourself. I'm sure you know that of yourself as well. But like, I think that part of it is just ignoring that critic in you and realizing that not everybody sees what you see and not everybody is seeing your music. Most people are seeing your music in a positive light anyways. So I'll always have days for the rest of my life. I'll have days when I wake up and I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this. But then I remind myself that I am someone who has done like things of great skill and I deserve these things. And I have to kind of remind myself of that, not in an arrogant way, like, oh, I'm the greatest, so they gave it to me. But at the same time, like you worked hard, so you you got that, right? But it's that up and down that led me to write this book.
So there's a book that I read once called Living with a Creative Mind. I highly recommend you check out that book. And he talks about that exact thing. He talks about the fact that most creatives struggle with the fact of like one day they feel like they're on the top of the world and they deserve everything that's coming to them, and then the other day they feel like they're the worst musician in the world, and that nobody like why do people even come to the shows? And it's that roller coaster and learning how to manage that roller coaster. And I think we need a little bit of both of those. I mean, not necessarily the negative talk, the negative self talk, but that like self questioning is the drive that makes us better. And then on the flip side, that level of self confidence is the drive that gives us the confidence to actually go out and do these things. Because otherwise, if you didn't have that confidence, it's like a level of faith that like you would never like try to even book these shows. Because if you didn't think you were good enough, then you wouldn't try to book these shows. So you need this balance of like the criticism that maybe not necessarily degrading criticism, but criticism like, okay, I want to get better, I want to sound better, I don't want to mess up at shows, versus also like, okay, I'm good enough. I need like people need to hear the music, and it's the balance between those two. And if you live too much in the one, well, then you're gonna be an arrogant jerk, and if you live too much in the other one, well, you're gonna be a depressing person to be around. You know what I mean? So it's like it's the balance between the two of them.
That's so good. Please send me that book. I'd love to read it.
Absolutely, for sure, man. So tell me about the music in it. I want to hear a little bit about the music, man. It sounded great, but like tell the audience a little bit about it so that intrigue them a little.
The music is every album that I make and every song I put out is always inspired by what I'm listening to at the time, I think.
Sure,
But
I
the
agree
cool
with
thing
that.
I think the cool thing about albums is that because it's made in such a long period of time and I go through phases of music so fast, like you can see just that, and the album track list isn't in chronological order of how I made the album, but you can see just like at this point in time I was listening to this, at this point in time I was listening to this, right? My first album, there's a lot of like 80s inspired stuff, but I put a lot of like digital and roboticness to it, a lot of auto tune, all that's like cool effects that I was really listening to at the time. But I think I always carry some form of 80s with me. I don't know. My parents listen to 80s music and 90s music. And uh,
Who are some of the inspirations for this album?
well, I played, I think in turn, there's a song called Rhythm on it. And I put it out earlier this year. Didn't know it was going to be on the album, but I felt it fit the album really well. And that was a lot more of a funk song. And in like, I don't know. I go a lot by. I'm inspired by a lot of bands, but I'm also inspired by guitar players. And Corey Wong was definitely someone who inspired that
Wow,
song.
the
Um,
YouTuber Corey Wong.
the guitarist Corey Wong, he was part of Wolfpack, and
Oh, okay.
but he is a YouTuber. I mean, he makes a lot of cool YouTube videos about his production and stuff.
Like the tech
He's,
guy, right? The music tech stuff,
I
or
think
no?
so. Yeah, I mean, Corey Wong. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking Andrew Wong.
Oh yeah, no, that's a that he is a YouTuber, but Corey Wong is a guitar player. He has a signature Stratocaster, which one day I'll get a Fender signature Stratocaster.
I love
But
your your faith in this stuff, man. I
I
think you
will.
need it, and I love that.
Yeah, so Corey Wong really inspired that. I think like he really taught me how to be really consistent with my rhythm playing. Just that fast attack that he has in his guitar playing. And then there's a lot of other. I think I was turning to because I love listening to singer songwriters, but I don't always feel. I always want. I always wish that production was more creative. And I think that I was listening to a lot of like I always wish that they were incorporating more band centric stuff in their songs. So basically, this album is like singer songwritery stuff half, and then suddenly it turns into like a band thing.
Mm.
There's a song called "Prove You Wrong." That's like the most. It starts out as the most singer songwritery Lizzie McAlpine type
Yeah.
song, but then I just start adding all sorts of distortion stuff in there and like
Oh, well, cool.
huge drums, deep drums, stuff
Yeah.
like that. And there's a little bit of singer songwriter influence on this album, but mostly bands. I mean, the 1975 is one of my favorite bands ever. And I was talking to somebody about this. I feel like all the music that I listen to is just controversial at some point, or like if it's not controversial now, it's gonna be controversial later. Like John Mayer, I got into him in like the pandemic, and I loved him, and I was listening to him, and then one of my friends was like, he's a jerk, right? And I was like, and anyways, Mayer always inspires my stuff, but I think in terms of this album, I was really looking for something that was different and different from my last album. So I started getting into like all sorts of different fusion R&B stuff, right? But most of where this like stuff is coming is from my bandmates. I would bring songs to my bandmates, and they would give me feedback and stuff. And not we didn't write a lot of this stuff together, but just playing with them inspired me to play a different way. And that's where a lot of like these songs are. If you notice that they're different from my first albums, because I just learned how to be a better musician through my bandmates, and I'm eternally grateful to them for that. But yeah.
Playing with other people totally changes the way you play, man, for sure.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like my drum programming got 100% better. I think I really learned, like I knew how to play bass, but I didn't know how to play bass, right? And then now I think I kind of understand it. I feel like playing enough shows to realize what the bass's role is
Hmm.
really about, and that changed the game for me. And I think I the first track in the album is probably one of my favorites, just because of how much I was drawing into my bandmates' influences and not into my own. It's a very theatrical track.
Okay.
It's called Imposter Syndrome, and it's like the title track of the album. And it was like the one of the first piano based songs I ever really did, because I'm a guitar player. Like I was like guitar playing the whole record. And then I just started playing this thing on piano. And honestly, like I've never written a song so fast where I wasn't producing it at the same time. Like I don't know if you do
Mm-hmm.
this too, but like I produce a song
Yeah.
at the same time as I write it, right?
Always.
But I never really sit down with a guitar and write the full song. But this song, I sat down at the piano and I just played the notes, I played the chords, and suddenly I had a song, right? And that I feel like I like songs that I write really fast because I'm only drawing from my instinct. And
Hmm.
this kind of drawing away from the question here. I'm sorry, but like
No, no. Thank
that
you.
that theatrical influence of that, because some of my bandmates are in theater and stuff, and they've had theater experience. Just drawing from that was really cool, and my bandmates ended up helping me arrange some of the stuff on that song, and one of my other friends came and played strings on it. It was
Oh,
awesome.
that's cool.
Probably one of my favorites on the record right now, but it could change. Who knows?
I love that, man. And one of the things I want to comment on is the fact that, kind of bringing it back to one of the things you said in the beginning, was the fact that you learned to do everything yourself. And I that's my favorite thing to hear. Like no shame to anybody that needs to like help with recording and stuff, but I think that there is some serious, because that's exactly my story. Is like I started on GarageBand. I start then like for a while I recorded a lot on GarageBand, and then finally bought Logic, and it was Logic 9 at the time, which I don't even know if and then it was Logic 10X or whatever. So from that, like, it was just a great learning experience. And then like when I go and like, to be honest with you, I've recorded in studios and I'm like, nah, I kind of just prefer being in my own studio.
Dude, I have the exact same feeling. Like I've been to recording studios. I'm just like, okay,
Exactly.
this is cool. You got all the great preamps and the Neve
Yeah.
console, and you got the amps and you got everything. But like, I feel the most creative right here. This is my home
Exactly.
studio. This is where the stuff happens, and I feel like I write my best.
That, and like I even feel like to some degree like things just move so slow in the professional studio, and it's like this could have the whole thing could have been done in way for whatever. But
Like, let me on the console. I can do this faster than you.
but no, that's good stuff, man. And I'm looking forward to people hearing this album. What do you have? What tell me about the show? We'll wrap it up after I want to hear, but I want to hear about the show.
So this show is an album release show. It's really significant to me just because it loops back to the venue that I played my first show at.
That's cool.
It's at the bitter end. Again, it's in New York, Manhattan, near NYU, on November 16th. And the best part about this show is that the bill this time is bands that are my friends.
That's
They're all
cool.
my friends. And there's like 5 bands in the bill this time, but they're all like my favorite people. I'm like super inspired every single time. They're like my peers in this scene, just people I look up to. And it's really cool that I was able to set that up. But I think last year, again, like it's like moving from this period of like doing everything myself to letting people kind of
Mm,
help me out with things. I think like it's interesting. And when I was doing everything by myself, I grew to love the control of it all because I could like
sure.
I was calling the shots for everything, which led me to sometimes struggle with working with other people because I
Hmm.
felt like, okay, because when I'm working with other people, things get slower and like things move along slower and like I have to like ask everyone for permission to do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, good things come out of it. Last year, I hosted a show just for my birthday. It was around this time, not for the like it was kind of like celebrating also 1 year of the first album, and I did it all by myself. I booked the venue, I sent the emails, we did rehearsals, and we set up that whole show. We promoted the show by ourselves. It was just us, the just our band, and all our friends and family came and like other people in the scene and my peers, and it was a great show. But that was a lot of work, and I will always appreciate that show just because of how much work we put into it, and how much we got from it, and it was so worth it to us. This year, I was just reaching out again to Kids Rock for Kids, who have gotten me so many opportunities. By the way, in like
Mm,
past year, like I was an audio tech for them in Gov Ball this year, and it was like so fantastic. Just one of the many things that they've given me, and I've grew to love working with them. So I just reached out to them. I was like, hey, do you have any shows where I could have like a 20-minute slot where I could just like kind of talk like play the album, some of the songs from the album. I know, like, because if you have any shows around this time, and they were like, we'll host an album release show for you.
wow,
So
that's crazy.
I think just the year of working with them and just being
Yeah.
really extensively volunteering with them, doing
Yeah.
mixes for them, doing all this stuff, and just having a good relationship with them, it was so important. And I realized that having good relationships, but not like connections where you're always looking for things. Like I wasn't looking for stuff here, right? But just having friendships with people is so
Hmm.
important.
Yeah.
Like the word connection is thrown around so much in this industry. Like you gotta have your connections, you gotta have your connections, right? It is true, but I think your friends are really gonna be the people that are gonna stick by you forever and will always be the ones that you love working with the most. Like my band is like Exhibit A, right? They're like
Yeah.
my friends who like they didn't know I had anything in me to do anything, but they were
Hmm.
like, okay, this seems cool. How about we jump on this and play music with this guy, right?
Yeah.
So this album release show is I owe it all to Kids Rock for Kids and their nonprofit organization now called Brooklyn Music Lab, where it's basically like a nonprofit helping unsigned artists, also in the same realm as like Kids Rock because they have like a whole bunch of branches now. They do a lot of different things, doing different shows and recordings and so on and so forth.
Mm.
But just being able to have that like stress gone, like it's still stressful, don't get me wrong, right? But like just being able to like, okay, he's got the organization part, they've got the organization part, they've got the venue and
Yeah.
money part, they've got all of that. I just have to put on a really good show is really exciting for me.
Yeah.
And this is one of the first shows this year that I'm headlining. So I'm really,
That's
really
great, man.
excited for it. And again, it's just like doing everything by myself was like really cool and all. And it helped me learn everything. I
Exactly.
was in the process for everything, but now being able to have people to help me out with stuff makes me so happy
Hmm.
because I'm able to just kind of distribute that and like you got this, you got this. But at the same time, I know what's going on in those areas.
Hmm.
And I think that was really important for me starting out. That's just probably the most important thing. I think for anybody starting out with their own music, you know, I think I'm in the same boat as you. Like I think I've spoken to a lot of industry professionals in the past couple months, and like all I realized is just like we're all in the same boat. And every single morning we wake up and they're just gonna be. We all have days when we wake up we have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
No matter how much industry experience you've
Yeah.
had. And I think this show is just a really exciting thing for me, just because I think it's the first time that I it's not the first time, but it's just I think one of the more significant times this year where I really felt that I am a musician and I can call myself a professional musician, and this
That's
is what
cool.
I do best.
Yeah, man, that's great, man. Well, I'm really happy for you. I'm really excited to see what's to come. And as we wrap up, I want to say, first of all, everybody go check out this new album that's coming out when it comes out. And if you're in the New York City area, the New York area, definitely consider checking out the show on the 16th. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited for all that's to come. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the channel and for an interview. And I want to say thank you to everybody that listened to this interview. I hope you stuck around and definitely go check out Ian's stuff and subscribe to this channel. And we'll see you in the next video.
Like and subscribe.
Well, thank you so much for watching, you guys. Have a great rest of your day. God bless and peace out.